imagery he'd been posting about himself as Jesus Christ, and he angrily condemned Donald Trump's attack on Pope Leo. What is your response to that?
I would, thanks for having me first. I would divide my response into two categories. One, I think that image was blasphemous, and I tweeted that fact. I thought it ought to be printed on black velvet so we could call it blasphemous and tacky. So it was not a good image, no bueno. Not defending it. Glad the president took it down. I'm glad he responded to criticism, albeit somewhat lamely. He had a red robe, or he was robed, not with a stethoscope. So that was one thing. The other thing was his scrape with the Pope. I would put that in a different category. The Pope was a Chicago lefty before he became Pope, and he is speaking bromides, inserting God into a geopolitical event, while at the same time objecting to other people injecting God. I'd just like to know what the rules are. If Pete Hegseth tweets as though he were a believing Christian, and the president tweets as though he's not a Christian, why are we upset at both? What are the rules here? And secondly, if Hegseth is a particular kind of Christian and he is speaking that way, he's speaking from his conviction with regard to the war, and the Pope is doing the same thing, a different variation, a different stream of Christianity, but he's speaking to international relations, and he's applying his understanding of the faith to it. Well, why does he get to do that and other people don't?
Okay, well, Tim Miller, you're a Catholic, I believe. Is that right?
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic. Piers, we're all on a journey together. You know, I'm not.
No, I was just curious what you feel about the row between the Pope and the president. You know, has what the Pope been saying crossed a line in terms of political commentary, or is he just being consistent to what most popes do, which is preach about peace and not war?
Yeah, I think that the people that think that the Pope has crossed a line, have no memory, or didn't start paying attention to the news or to the Pope before Donald Trump was around. Pope Leo's comments are in line with what we've heard from popes going all the way back to Pope John Paul. And Pope John Paul II opposed both Iraq wars.
Yeah, I don't think, and here's the thing, I think people are attacking the Pope because I don't think the Christian community like being reminded that they're not supposed to support this war due to their Christian values. The fact that some of them are cheerleading, the death of the innocent civilians or even the IRGC is a bit unchristian. And I think that the Pope telling them that or reminding them that is kind of, making them react in that certain way where they got to attack people who kind of, call them out. So that's just my opinion on it. That's what it seems, to be quite honest with you. The man reminded you about your supposed religious values, and y'all kind of lashed out on him for not following it. Or I guess for not getting down with this war. Here's the thing. I mean, why would he? I mean, why would any priest be okay with this? Like, think about it. Any religious leader. Well, not any religious, any Christian religious leader.
Vocally. I don't recall George H.W. Bush or George W. Bush getting into a fight with the Pope. Multiple popes have criticized Democratic leaders for their stances on abortion and other issues. I don't remember Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi telling the Pope to shut his pie hole when he weighed in on the Catholic teaching on abortion. Donald Trump wants to make everything about himself. He wants to pick this fight because that's the only thing he knows how to do is bully people and pick fights. So it's kind of what
you got to understand, though. Catholics are a crucial part of the conservative base. I mean, they're the largest group of Christians, largest group of Christians in America. So I would say they probably do have the most power when it comes to voting as a Christian group. So being in line with the Catholics and making sure you have the Catholics, I would say, I hate to use this language, but under your control is very vital for Donald Trump. And honestly, any Republican or any conservative, you kind of have to, you gotta have to, placate to the Christians, especially the Catholics. Why? Because they are the largest voting group in America. Like, to be real with you, you kind of gotta placate to these guys, even if you're Christian or not. I would prefer you would, but here's the problem about that. if like Donald Trump was going against the Pope, that could turn a lot of Catholics away from the conservative movement or away from MAGA. And it kind of is, because the fact that, you know, people are even fighting about this is kind of, you know, pissing off a lot of Catholics.
Expect for Donald Trump. It's a little confusing for J.D. Vance, who converted to Catholicism 2 seconds ago, and then decided.
Nah, he converted to Catholicism a while ago. He actually just made it more public, like last year. But no, he's been a Catholic for a while.
I had to write a book about it.
Well, right. Okay, then you read the book. Then I mean, you know, he's been one since like what, 2018, 2019. Wow.
Who converted to Catholicism 2 seconds ago, and then decided to write a book about his conversion, to now come out and say that the Pope needs to be careful when he speaks about theology, as if J.D. Vance, who's been a Catholic for 2 minutes, knows more about Catholic doctrine and just war theory than the Pope. I think probably he would benefit from listening to the Pope. And I mean,
the Pope, whose life is literally to study, you know, all this scripture and doctrine. So it's hilarious to sit there and say that, though. I ain't gonna lie. JD was out of pocket.
I don't know who is really buying that from him, from the vice president. Like, why? You know, it's not as if he comments about how Donald Trump should be careful with his language ever. J.D. Vance never criticizes Donald Trump, but now all of a sudden he simultaneously went through this conversion to MAGA hood, where he's a Donald Trump acolyte, and he went through a conversion to Catholicism at the same time. It's very phony and it's very fake, and I don't think it's helping either of them politically.
Yeah, which the fascinating thing to me, I'm a Catholic, and so I don't like seeing people trashing the Pope for just saying what a Pope is expected to say, I would argue, which is to preach peace, not war. But what's interesting is the politics of this. 20% of Americans are Catholic, many of whom will have voted for Donald Trump. And the latest NBC News poll showed that Pope Leo has a 34-point net favorability in his personal approval rating. Donald Trump -12. Pope Leo is one of the most popular public figures in the United States. He's the first American Pope. People like the guy. And, you know, 42% of Americans view the Pope favorably compared to 41% for Trump. So there's no real upside here politically for Trump, which just begs the question, why is he doing it?
Well, I actually went to an all-boys Jesuit Catholic high school, so if I may bring out a banger from the Bible, because we have such a religious panel today. This was Jesus' warning in Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. That's for you, Pastor Wilson. But speaking about the Pope, it's terrible politics, like you said. First and foremost, this is the spiritual leader of over.
One distasteful thing that Christians do is when they try to hit you with scripture to, you know, talk down on you. And I'm like, yeah, you know, Jesus put out those scriptures, or not Jesus, but God laid out those scriptures to uplift people. The fact that there are really Christians out there that use scripture to try to put down people, I mean, that's completely against what God gave us the word for. So, like, can y'all not do that and not disgrace the word of our Lord? Thank you. Thank you very much.
1 billion people. The Pope, just because he wears a costume and has a Pope mobile, Donald Trump thinks he's a politician who fights crime. I think Donald Trump thinks the Pope is Batman. No, it's a spiritual leader with immense significance for the world, and not just Catholics around the world, but a lot of religious communities. And as such, Donald Trump picking a fight with Pope Leo, like you said, who is the most popular American right now. When all Americans are polled, the #1 most popular American is Pope Leo, the first American Pope. Donald Trump, in this disastrous war, has attacked the Pope 8 times. On Easter, the holiest day for Christians, which celebrates resurrection and rebirth, what did Donald Trump do? A blasphemous tweet using profane language, threatening genocide in this unwinnable war. Then I think he converts to Islam, Piers, to mock Muslims, and he says, praise be to Allah. He follows it up with more genocidal tweets. Then a week later on Orthodox Easter, what does he do? Mocks the Pope with his blasphemous image, the first commandment, thou shalt not worship any other gods before me. Then he gaslights the world and says, it wasn't me as the Pope or God or Jesus. No, I was just the Red Cross. And everyone's like, please, now you're lying to us. But the Pope, meanwhile, is doing what the Pope always does. The Pope is preaching the word of God, trying his best to live the life of Jesus. Jesus, who, by the way, healed the sick and the blind, didn't charge copay, who divided fish and loaves, gave it to people, didn't tell them to pull themselves up from the bootstrap.
Now that was a real statement. It's like Jesus out here healing the blind, ain't charging copay, no insurance needed, free from the Lord, your Savior.
And Donald Trump has picked this fight with the Pope and says he needs to do more to fight crime. It's terrible politics. It's also blasphemous. It is also terrible with his base. You've seen Alex Jones now invoke the 25th Amendment, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You've seen videos now of MAGA saying, you know what, this is a step too far. It's just unnecessary vulgarity on top of an unpopular war. I want to remind you all, he promised his base no more forever wars. What does he do? Lead us in this unwinnable war. Oil prices are up, gas prices are up, fertilizer prices are up, and now we're in food shortages. He promised to release the Epstein files, is doing a cover-up. He said he'll bring down inflation. Now we're going to get worse inflation. And to top it all off, Piers, he is now attacking, like you said, the most popular political, not political, but the most popular individual in America, Pope Leo, who is the spiritual leader of 1 billion Catholics. On top of that, he has a war in Iran. He's surrounded by all these cosplay crusaders like Pete Hegseth insulting Muslims. And if I can, to the pastor real quick. Well, Pete Hegseth is not the Pope.
So wild about that. Like, it's kind of crazy because the disrespect of like Catholics and all this, like, it's kind of wild. And then while also bringing up the crusade, because the Crusades was initiated by the Catholics. So yeah, all you Christian supremacists who are now sitting there bashing Catholics while also forgetting that the crusade was initiated by the Pope, the crusade that y'all like to whitewash and dick ride, talking about, oh, it's all good for Christians to do forced conversions and taking of land, but when Muslims do it, oh my God. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how y'all talking crazy about the Pope now, but y'all kind of champion what the Catholics did, with the Crusades. What did y'all do? Well, no, I'm talking about all the other Christian domination. What did y'all do? The only real steppers out here was the Catholics. Those were the only real Christian steppers. Only real Christian goons out here was the Catholics. And y'all insulting them now? The disrespect. The Catholics should be offended. They have every right to be offended at this point.
Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense in the United States of America. Pete Hegseth should read the Constitution. We have a separation of church and state. Also, Pastor, I know Pete Hegseth is your star pupil. Pete Hegseth, maybe he should read the Bible and not watch Pulp Fiction, because Pete Hegseth embarrassed himself and just quoted Samuel L. Jackson from Ezekiel 25:17. So maybe when you get invited to the Pentagon, sit with Pete Hegseth, have him read the Bible and read the Constitution, and maybe he could just tattoo Ezekiel on his arm this time. That's your failure, sir, as his teacher.
Yeah, nice try.
Well, Pastor Doug, your response to that?
Oh, gotta make sure to double tap that screen, like the video, and you have any question, comment, jokes, or disagreements, I'll be happy to read it out loud. Just send it in a super chat, or you can send it in a Venmo. Appreciate the support, guys. Hey, let's keep it going, and make sure to double tap that screen, like the video.
Yeah, there are a multitude of things to respond to there. First, to say that the Pope is simply talking about peace and love and all the things that a spiritual leader has to say. The spiritual leader of that many professing Christians needs to do more than wave his hands over a geopolitical mess and speak in bromides and then back it off and say, I wasn't talking about President Trump in the clip that was shown at the beginning. You can't just say boys, boys, as though you have any kind of moral authority to speak to it. Pope John Paul II did oppose the Iraq wars, as did I, right? So that's one thing. But Pope John Paul II was instrumental in the collapse of the Soviet Union. He was no stranger to hardball politics. He knew what he was doing. He and Thatcher and Reagan had something that they were working on. And so it's a little bit simplistic. Pope John Paul II was not speaking in bromides. Francis was a bromide meister, Pope Leo, the Pope Leo is speaking in all these sweetie nice categories. You can't say, and this is really important, you can't say, you quote Matthew 7 and say that's for me, beware of people who are wolves in sheep's clothing, and then point to the man who is dressed out in sheep's clothing. The one thing we can say about Trump is that he's not a wolf in sheep's clothing. If anything, he's a wolf in wolf's clothing, or quite possibly a sheep in wolf's clothing. The Pope, who is doing all these God is in favor of pussy willows and rainbows, that doesn't cut it. The Iranian regime is a murderous regime. There are legitimate objections.
I mean, hang on, Pastor, if I may.
I mean, I don't know. That does kind of go outside the words of Jesus. Do I need to pull the Bible out again, bro? Because I feel like we be forgetting our guy Jesus when he said on Sermon on the Mount. I mean, first off, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. So, I mean, bro, what happened to be a peacemaker? Don't you want to be a son of your heavenly Father, or nah? Y'all just gave up on that? I mean, no, what happened? I'm reading it right here in the Bible. It's like right here. I mean, oh, well, what else did my man said? He said, we'll see here. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. I mean, what happened to that? And I mean, if you want me to go ahead and go all pastor on you, what my man is talking about is trying to understand your enemies who persecute you, so that you don't always continue this endless cycle of violence. Because when you understand why they hate you, you can fix those problems and you can end the endless cycle of violence that God hates to see us carry out with each other. So I'm sorry, but it's right there in the Bible. Y'all know damn well it's there, but y'all choose to ignore it. Why? Because I don't know. Some of y'all just bloodthirsty bastards. I don't get it. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, though. I can accept that.
Jump in. Let me jump in, because I'm sorry, but it seems to me if you're going to compare the Pope's rhetoric in the last month with Donald Trump's rhetoric, one has been brazenly espousing genocide, talking about the end of civilization in Iran, which would mean the murder of 90 million people, the vast majority.
He was talking about the regime.
Civilians. People could. Well, he wasn't talking about the regime, was he? He said the end of civilization, not the end of the regime.
I mean, bro, it ain't only the regime that lives in Iran. Bro, y'all sound crazy. He was talking about the regime. He said the entire civilization, bro. I mean, that includes the people of Iran. I just want to let you know that.
Why do we try and pretend that Donald Trump didn't say what we heard him say?
Oh, look, you don't have to persuade me that that Donald Trump's rhetoric can be all over the place. His tweets there were an art of the unhinged deal. He's dealing with a maniacal regime, and he is negotiating with them.
You know, at least he admit that is the art of the unhinged deal. I'm going to say unhinged things to get the Iranians to come to the table. No, it's not going to make them double down on their stance. Not going to make them puff their chests out even harder. No, they're going to capitulate and cower because I'm threatening to destroy their entire civilization. Like, who told them that was going to work? But all right, though.
More and more people to hate Israel.
You said Israelis should stand up against Ben-Gvir, Smotrich.
This government has to be very careful now that it doesn't drive more and more people to hate Israel.
You said Israelis should stand up against Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, but they're going to be voting for them in larger numbers in the next election.
The siren is now.
We should remember also the Palestinian victims at this moment.
He doesn't stand up for the dead soldiers, so he's not really Israeli. He's a foreign-funded hater. Okay. There's not one party that represents you. You're out.
The Arab parties, they represent him. You would have been murdered by Hamas on October 7 if they got close to you as well.
It may come as a shock to viewers in the many places where the Iran war is deeply unpopular, but some communities in Israel staged a protest this weekend against the ceasefire in Lebanon. Israel sees its war on Hezbollah as inseparable from the Iran war. Most Israelis support it. And there's every chance that Netanyahu will suffer big political consequences if Trump decrees an early end to the war that Netanyahu persuaded him to start. In any case, the state of Israel could be living with the consequences of Netanyahu's decisions for many years to come. Many formerly reliable allies of Israel eventually condemned the war in Gaza and moved to recognize a Palestinian state. Well, today the Spanish government will formally ask the entire European Union to sever its ties with Israel over its violations of
Correction. Okay, so it wasn't the UN, it was the okay, it was the European Union. So yeah, you're about to ask the entire Spain's about to ask the entire European Union to cut ties with Israel, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna want to do it. I mean, there's a lot of countries that just had it with Israel at this point. I mean, shoot, hopefully, I mean, America not being one of them, sadly, but there's a lot of countries.
International law. And here in the United States, where it matters most, support for Israel is cratering. The days of unanimous bipartisan support are done. Young people have turned in droves.
Gen Z, that rising generation, look at this. Across party there, 3/4 of Gen Z say they sympathize more with the Palestinians than the Israelis. That's a massive sea change.
Well, every candidate to succeed Donald Trump.
I'm sorry, but let me just explain why people sympathize with the Palestinians more. Because if you're an American, if you're a real American, you honestly understand why the Palestinians are fighting. I know what you're saying, like, what in God's name are you talking about? Well, let me break it down for you. The Palestinians are literally fighting for their sovereignty. They're literally fighting for the right to exist. You know how Israel says they have a right to exist? Well, I mean, when you ask them to Palestine, they want to hit you with they don't exist. So I'm sorry, but if you're the Palestinians, your ancestors lived on this land, but out of nowhere, the Israelis come and take it from you. It's called the Nakba. They literally take it from them, kick them out, and force them into basically an open air concentration camp, which is Gaza. And they're just supposed to sit there and accept that? Like, really think about that. If you're a real American, and that was happened to you, you would fight tooth and nail. You would die over fighting back for your freedom. So I'm sorry, but that's why a lot of people actually get down with the Palestinians, and nobody supports the innocent killing of civilians. But we do understand the plight when you read the history of it. So no, it's not supporting terrorism, but it's understanding that, if you're going to sit there and literally try to take people's land, try to dehumanize them, and try to erase their existence from this earth, and you expect them not to fight back, you're tripping. Like, you're literally tripping. Or you just hate Palestinians that much, that's what you hope they do.
President, whether Democrat or Republican, will now have to take a position on this profound change in public opinion. Democratic presidential hopeful Rahm Emanuel, who's Jewish, is calling for the U.S. to end preferential treatment for Israel altogether.
We don't subsidize Great Britain buying weapons. We don't supply.
And those of you who are saying, well, we're here in America. Well, I'm sorry, then I guess you just don't have enough perspective to have this conversation. And I guess that's only for high IQ people. You got to be able to understand where other people is coming from to actually stop this, endless cycle of violence. I mean, did I not just read the Bible where Jesus tells us to love those who persecute us and all that good stuff, and love your enemy and all that? Why? Because if you have constant hate for them, they're always going to be your enemy. There's always going to be constant violence. And unless you're ready to eradicate an entire race, you're always going to be in conflict. And some people just can't understand that. Or some people, like I said, have this spoiled American perspective to where, well, that could never happen to me, so I just won't think about it. Okay, well, you just lack perspective then, and that's fine.
Or financial assistance to Japan. Israel's a very wealthy nation. There should be no more taxpayer support for what they want to do. And they get the same deal that any one of our allies do. They have to abide by the laws of the United States if they're going to buy X weapons. And that's how it should be constructed. Jake's point, and I agree with this, is the prime minister went to this president like he's gone to 4 other presidents. And every one of the other presidents said, not a chance are we doing that because the equities are not worth it. This president bought it. He has responsibility as a commander in chief. And I think he made a big mistake for it.
Well, all of this amounts to an extraordinary, unprecedented shift in a country where presidential candidates traditionally rank their support for Israel on a scale of 9 to 10. Whether Israel can do anything to remedy this is unclear. What is clear is that photos of the IDF attacking icons of Jesus with a sledgehammer are unlikely to resolve the
situation. And here's the problem with that statement here. You're right. We conquered it. But here's the problem with that. What did the Indians do? Did they just take their land being taken sitting down? No, they was fighting us tooth and nail to the point we had to give them their own damn reserves outside of our laws. So history just shows that you just can't sit there and take away people's sovereignty and act like they're not going to fight you back tooth and nail for years and years. And until you give them something, it's going to be this continuous beef. Our own history proves this. But all right, though, back to the show. Make sure to double tap that screen, like the video, guys. And if you have any question, comment, jokes, or disagreements, feel free to super chat it in. I'll be happy to engage with it. But sometimes I'll pick out some interesting comments. Sometimes.
Do anything to remedy this is unclear. What is clear is that photos of the IDF attacking icons of Jesus with a sledgehammer are unlikely to resolve the situation. Joining me to debate all of this is former Israeli hostage negotiator Gershon Baskin, retired Lieutenant Colonel and IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus, Ishai Fleischer, the international spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron and advisor to the Israeli government, and Gideon Levy, author and commentator for Haaretz. So welcome to all of you. Jonathan Conricus, let's just start, if we may, with this appalling image of an IDF soldier in southern Lebanon attacking and destroying an icon of Jesus Christ with a sledgehammer. And this is now being confirmed by Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu said today, I was stunned and saddened to learn that an IDF soldier damaged a Catholic religious icon in southern Lebanon. I condemn the act in the strongest terms. We express regret for the incident and for any hurt this has caused to believers in Lebanon and around the world. And the IDF itself posted on X, the IDF views the incident with great severity and emphasizes the soldier's conduct is wholly inconsistent with the values expected of its troops. The IDF is working to assist the community in restoring the statue to its place. A priest in Debel said the cross was part of a small shrine in the garden of a family living on the edge of the village. There will be many American Christians, Jonathan, who are already probably reeling, if they're Catholic, from President Trump's constant attacks against Pope Leo. But they're now looking at this and thinking, why are we supporting this attack on Iran with Israel if the IDF in Lebanon are desecrating icons of Jesus Christ? What would you say to them?
I mean, bro, Israel's been known for driving out Christians from their homes in the West Bank. They've bombed churches in Gaza. I mean, they spit on Christians. So, and not all Israelis, but there are certain sects of Jews that live in Israel that think it's okay to spit on Christians. So I'm sorry, but it's kind of common. Some of these Israelis really don't give a fuck about Christianity. I mean, it is part of their religion to not really see Christ as a holy figure that he is. So, I mean, hey, man, it matches up to me. I don't know what y'all surprised about.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Hello, Piers. Shalom from Israel. I wouldn't make any, connection between the two different things. One is American foreign policy, the pursuit of defeating the Iranian regime, making sure that they don't have nuclear weapons, and protecting Americans and American interest from a future significant threat against the U.S. That's one thing. That's the why the U.S. is fighting against Iran. Has absolutely nothing to do with this reprehensible act, criminal act by an Israeli soldier. I hope that what the Prime Minister said and what the IDF has publicly said will happen, that there will be swift and transparent disciplinary measures. This is a soldier who I don't think he is fit to serve, definitely not in combat, and maybe not in the IDF at all, and should be punished for desecrating a religious symbol. And I think it's absolutely contrary to everything that we stand for. I could only wish that, I saw your tweet, which got 1 million views, and I've seen lots of other coverage of it. Obviously, the usual people are out there feasting, not necessarily you in this category, but the usual anti-Semites feasting on this reprehensible act by an IDF soldier. Didn't see these same people.
We're feasting. Okay, well, let me feast some more. All right, I'm about to do some feasting, guys. Look at the horror. Look what they've done. Our greatest ally. It's okay.
كسرين الصليب هلا لميناه حطيناه على جنب منطقة الدورة حد مستشفى.
Hold on. I need to get my daily dose of spreading anti-Semitism. Okay, I'm feasting, as he said, feasting. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm over here feasting. This guy over here getting crazy with the sledgehammer, but me, I'm feasting. Okay.
Even tweet when hundreds of Christians were massacred in Nigeria, or when churches were bombed and desecrated by Muslims in Syria or Iran or Iraq or any other place, or when Christians in Arab Christians in Palestine are forced to flee out of persecution by Sunni Muslims. It is something special when Jews are caught on camera doing horrible and indefensible actions to Christian symbols. But I suggest that we put, we check and treat everything as equal. Last thing I'll say, and I think the Prime Minister said it pretty clearly, if we put things into context, and to answer the question of Christians supporting Israel, Israel is the only country in the Middle East where Christians are safe. Israel is the only country where there's freedom of worship in the Middle East. Israel is the only country.
That is a lie. I mean, let's be real. The Christians live safe in Jordan. They live safe in Qatar. I mean, they live pretty safe in UAE, Saudi Arabia. So those are just a handful of Muslim countries, and Christians live safely in there. So why do they lie and sit here and try to think like, oh, like Israel's the only place Christians could go and feel safe? I mean, if that was the case, then all the Christians in all these Muslim countries would be flooding to Israel. But there's more Christians in Qatar than there is in Israel.
Country in the Middle East that has a growing and safe.
Thank you. Somebody, and Iran, Lebanon, them as well. Bro, a large population of Christians. So no, that's not true at all. There's Christians reside all over the Middle East. So does Jews.
Christian population where Christians are participating in public and political and economic and academic life. They are free to choose every profession, and they live very good lives, excellent lives, like me and many others do in Israel, contrary to everything else that happens in the Middle East. And I think that is important context. But to summarize and to be very clear, reprehensible, shouldn't have been done. I hope swift action is taken, and I hope that people can look beyond this, which is clickbaity and very interesting on an internet level, and recognize who the real villains and who the real people in the Middle East who are religiously intolerant. Those are the fanatic Muslims. They do far worse than bash the head of a statue, as insensitive and horrible as that is. They take the lives of Christians themselves, or they persecute them. So,
I mean, that's the IDF just did that in Lebanon, took the life of Christians. So the same thing you're getting mad at what ISIS did, that's what you guys are doing right now.
Let's keep that into perspective as we continue speaking.
Yeah, some might view the actions of the IDF soldier to be a pretty extraordinary example of intolerance, actually, particularly of someone else's religious beliefs.
And I do want you to understand something. A lot of people don't understand this, but let me break it down to you. Yes, Islam, the Muslims, they worship the same God that the Jews and the Christians worship. And you want to know why I know this? Because of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome on the Rock, right? And if you don't know what the Dome on the Rock is, I mean, well, you should know, especially as a Christian or a Jew, because this is where I believe, Moses received the 10 Commandments and something about a sacrificing of a son as well. Sorry to be butchering up my Christian theology, guys. I truly apologize. But yes, the Dome on the Rock. And it's crucial part of Christian and Jewish history is part of a mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Let me go ahead and show you a bit of some pictures of it right here. Dome on the Rock in Jerusalem. Yes. Let me see right here. This rock. Pretty much where the foundations of Judaism and Christianity come from, and Islam as well. So this is how you know, Islam worships the same God, because they worship the Moses. They worship all the miracles that came out of this rock, or all the revelations that came out of this rock. And they built a mosque on it, the third holiest site in all of Islam. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That they built a holy site on top of a very crucial location in Judaism and Christianity, the Dome on the Rock. So remember that, guys, when people try to say, oh, they don't worship the same God. Well, then why do they honor the Dome on the Rock? Why do they build a whole holy site around it? That I ain't gonna lie, the Jews is low-key pissed off at them for that. And we, some certain Christians, I mean, they're somewhat pissed off a bit about it, but it is what it is, because it proves that they worship the same God as us. Well, or, the other Abrahamic faiths. Like, I hope you guys remember this. It is an Abrahamic faith, aka worshiping of the same Abrahamic God. All right, then. Now we got that quick little lesson. Let's get back to Piers.
But let me come to Gideon Levy, because this dovetails with a very disturbing report that ERUPTS, the publication that you write for, put a report out over the weekend featuring anonymous interviews with former IDF soldiers detailing atrocities they'd witnessed in Gaza. One described serving in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza in December 2023 when a platoon noticed suspicious figures and fired. He said, "When we got to a destination, I realized these weren't terrorists. It was an old guy and 3 boys, maybe teenagers. Not one of them was armed, but their bodies were riddled with bullets. Then the battalion commander came over with his people, and one spat on the bodies and yelled, 'This is what happens to anybody who messes with Israel, you sons of bitches.'"
Yeah, and if you don't know, look, so there was a documentary released out by IDF soldiers who left the IDF because of the atrocities being done in Gaza and in the West Bank. And they come out and they tell their stories. Now, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and react to that on stream one day, but I'm going to be real with you, though. I'm going to warn you guys. That shit is in Hebrew. You know, they got the subtitles and all that good stuff, but it's mainly going to be in Hebrew. But I will react to it one day because these guys do say some pretty crazy things, and it's extremely heartbreaking. But all right, though, let's get to it. And this is what Piers is talking about. IDF soldiers literally coming out and saying, yo, like, we wilding out there in Gaza, and we not doing the Lord's work at all.
A very disturbing report that ERUPTS, the publication that you write for, put a report out over the weekend featuring anonymous interviews with former IDF soldiers detailing atrocities they'd witnessed in Gaza. One described serving in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza in December 2023 when a platoon noticed suspicious figures and fired. He said, "When we got to a destination, I realized these weren't terrorists. It was an old guy and 3 boys, maybe teenagers. Not one of them was armed, but their bodies were riddled with bullets. Then the battalion commander came over with his people, and one spat on the bodies and yelled, 'This is what happens to anybody who messes with Israel, you sons of bitches.' Another soldier described a shooting at an army outpost in southern Gaza. She said, "Suddenly the soldiers on watch noticed 5 Palestinians crossing the line they weren't allowed to cross, heading for northern Gaza. The battalion commander gave an order to overwhelm them with fire, even though they hadn't been confirmed as armed or anything like that. A tank started shooting at them with its machine gun, hundreds of bullets. 4 of the 5 Palestinians were killed. A few hours later, a bulldozer buried them in the sand." The article also describes a sniper who shot people seeking aid and drone operators who killed civilians. And there was a lot more very, very shocking detail in this investigation. So you put it together, you know, much as people will listen to Jonathan Comricus and understand context is important, but the combination of that appalling image of this IDF soldier desecrating a statue of Jesus with this report in your publication, it certainly is testing extremely hard, I would argue, this constant refrain we hear that the IDF is the most moral army in the world.
I can show you.
With an 8-to-1 civilian kill ratio, yep. Most moral army, most compassionate army in the world with an 8-to-1 civilian kill ratio. That is crazy.
That Jonathan will say that those were exceptions.
I guess that's
you will bring more and more testimonies by soldiers, and you will always hear the Israeli denial, the Israeli self-denial. There will always be Jonathans who will explain us that those exceptions don't tell us the full story. They will talk about the context, and I want to talk about the context. The context of the soldier who broke this sculpture of Jesus, and the context of those horrible and horrifying stories that we read last Friday in Haaretz is the same context. An army who is now preoccupied in a brutal occupation for decades now cannot behave otherwise. You cannot maintain such an occupation for so many years and remain human. Doesn't work. Didn't work in any other occupation in the world. And the best thing that people like Jonathan can do is once to look at the truth and to admit it. Because we, first of all, need it. We Israelis. What will make people realize that we grow a monster in front of our eyes? What will they make them being convinced that we crossed any possible line. You know, Piers, there are 6 million uprooted people now in the Middle East, wandering around from here to there. Part of them lost their homes forever. In Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran. Are we really proud to be a country which creates such a reality for 6 million human beings? Isn't it the time once to look at the truth and say, yes, we went too far? Our megalomaniac dreams, our belief that only by force and only by military force, without any restraints, will solve the problems. I don't deny there are problems, there are enemies, there are dangers. But look what we are doing. We are now in all fronts around, refusing any ceasefire. Thanks God we had Donald Trump to stop these 2 wars now. Otherwise, we would continue it forever. And the Jonathans would justify it. And they will never acknowledge that something went wrong, that something is sick, basically, not exceptions. I was today in the West Bank. I'm there every week. There is no exceptions anymore. The pogroms of the settlers together with the soldiers, together, planned together, committed together. This is not an exception. This is an army of occupation who cannot operate otherwise but become more and more and more brutal. And here we see the result. And the result you just showed when someone like Rami Manuel, who speaks Hebrew, who spent some years, I think, in Israel, for him it is enough. He says enough is enough. Not me, the self-hating Jew. Someone who was a real, genuine friend of Israel says enough is enough. And you will hear more and more those voices. And the only way to put an end to it is, first of all, to recognize, to realize that something is wrong with us, for God's sake.
Oh, damn.
Well, strong words there. Ishai Fleischer, you know, the Rahm Emanuel comments I thought were very striking. He's a very high-profile American Jew, basically saying it's time for America to stop treating Israel as an exceptional country that is worthy of our billions of dollars of support. They should be treated the same as everybody else. And that comes with the backdrop of this Pew Research Center survey showing that more than 60% of Americans now view Israel unfavorably, up from 53% only last year. Now, I'm old enough to remember when these kind of numbers would be utterly unthinkable 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So, you know, as somebody like me who loves Israel as a country, loves Israeli people, has many, many Jewish friends around the world, from LA to Sydney to London, and has become increasingly critical myself of the Israeli government, this one, and how it's been behaving, and critical of many of the actions of the IDF at the behest of this government.
All right, now let's get over to here in PBD and what he's saying. Do want to make sure I get to all these guys. Oh, God, make sure to double tap that screen and like the video, guys. If you've got any questions, comments, jokes, or disagreements, feel free to super chat it in, or you can go ahead and send a Venmo to double the value of your support. But all right, though, if you can't do that, make sure to double tap that screen because it is free to like the video. All right. Oh, and subscribe to the channel as well. All right, now I'm done with all the plugs.
J.D. Vance is still going to Islamabad 18 hours. And word on the street is that IRGC is not going to show up. U.S. is saying